Madam Deputy Speaker, Mr. Deputy Speaker, I'm sure you'll understand that I'll be trying to keep this statement short to return to the Department to be fully briefed. However, there's a number of developments that I wish to update the House about in the meantime. Earlier today, the Foreign Secretary made a statement updating the House on the military action undertaken by the United States, who conducted airstrikes against 3 Iranian nuclear facilities, Fordo, Natanz and Isfahan. No British forces were involved in these US strikes, but the UK and the US share an ambition that Iran can never be allowed to develop a nuclear weapon, and has taken action to alleviate that threat. America is the closest defence and security ally, and our militaries will continue to work in lockstep every day. As the Foreign Secretary said, that this is a critical moment for the Middle East. It follows a period of escalating conflict in an already volatile region. Yesterday, my right honourable friend, the Prime Minister, urged Iran to return to the negotiating table and reach a diplomatic solution to end this crisis. I echo that call. There is no route for Iranian military retaliation that brings this crisis to an end. The only off-ramp for Iran is to get serious and to return to diplomacy. The MOD's #1 priority has been the protection of our people and our bases in the region. Working alongside the Chief of Defence Staff, ministers have directed commanders to take all necessary measures to protect our servicemen and women. Force protection now is at its highest state across all deployed units in the Middle East. The additional RAF Typhoon jets announced by the Prime Minister have now arrived in the region to reinforce our posture, deter threats and reassure our partners. And I want to be clear, we will not rule out sending further capabilities if they are required. And we will take all steps necessary to protect our people and our assets. As we recognised in the Strategic Defence Review, we must always put our people at the heart of our defence plans. And that's why we've acted swiftly to bolster our defences and ensure our forces are supported and protected. I want to thank all our outstanding personnel who have worked tirelessly in the past few days, often with little sleep, to support the UK's response, both at home and abroad. And further to media reporting over the weekend, I can confirm that we're in contact with the authorities in Cyprus regarding the arrest of a British man. I'm limited in what I can say due to the ongoing police investigation, but I can tell the House that RAF Akrotiri was not breached. Mr. Deputy Speaker, we are continually monitoring this fast-changing situation and stand ready to respond to any threats. Mr. Deputy Speaker, I now want to turn to the protection of our bases at home. The illegal entry and criminal vandalism by the group Palestine Action at RAF Brize Norton last week was disgraceful. I can confirm 2 RAF Voyager aircraft were damaged by paint, but there was no further damage to infrastructure or assets, nor has there been any impact on planned operations from Brize Norton. Mr. Deputy Speaker, not only was this epically stupid, but it was also a direct attack on our national security. Our personnel stationed at RAF Brize Norton served with total dedication and professionalism. They worked tirelessly to support our armed forces deployed across the world to deliver military assistance to Ukraine, and they have been formally recognised for their contribution in flying humanitarian aid into Gaza. So this action does nothing to further the path to peace. It does nothing to further the Palestinian cause. It does nothing to further any cause. And everyone across the House is united in condemning it. Mr. Deputy Speaker, this must never happen again. I've spoken with the Chief of Defence Staff and the Chief of the Air Staff about this incident earlier today. Enhanced security measures across the whole of defence have been put in place since Friday, including on aircraft and airfield operating surfaces. RAF patrols have increased. Physical security has been improved at the suspected point of entry at Brize Norton. And the Defence Secretary has ordered that a full security review is conducted at pace, not only at Brize, but across the defence estate. Counter-terrorism policing South East and Thames Valley Police are leading the investigation to establish the exact circumstances into the events and to identify those responsible. We will continue to work with the police and pursue this unacceptable act of vandalism. This is subject to a live counter-terrorism investigation, so I hope the House will understand that I cannot provide any further details at this time. But this is more than just disruption. Palestine Action's activity has increased in frequency and severity. Its methods have become more aggressive, with its members demonstrating a willingness to use violence. Its activities meet the threshold set out in the statutory tests established under the Terrorism Act 2000. And that is why the Home Secretary is today announcing that she intends to proscribe Palestine Action. Mr. Deputy Speaker, the instability in the Middle East and the continued war in Ukraine shows why this week's NATO Leaders Summit in The Hague matters. We are living in a more dangerous and unpredictable world. This summit is a moment where NATO allies will pledge to step up on defence, to boost defence spending that boosts our collective security. President Trump and NATO Chief Mark Rutte are right. The current NATO spending pledge of at least 2% of GDP on defence is a relic of an old era. We are in a new era of threat, which demands a new era for defence and defence spending. That is why the government announced the biggest sustained increase in defence spending since the end of the Cold War, and it is why this week at NATO we will discuss a new, higher spending target with our allies. And the United Kingdom is up for that discussion. Mr. Deputy Speaker, we will make Britain safer, secure at home and strong abroad, and I commend this statement to the House.
Order. Order. Just before we proceed, the Minister's statement will be circulated to the House, as is the custom on both sides. You will notice that it will not be complete, in the sense that there was a preamble that the Minister delivered prior to going into what you will be given. That is to try to reflect the fast-moving nature of the situation. I understand that courteously and properly the two front benches have been informed of that. I hope everybody understands that and will make allowances for it. Shadow Secretary of State, James Cartledge.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I'm grateful to the Minister of advance side of his statement and entirely understand that it is a fast-moving situation in relation to Qatar. Grateful for the limited update he could provide. We join him in condemning any escalation and look forward to further updates in due course. On Brize Norton, let me say what the Minister was unable to. The attack on RAF Brize Norton was not vandalism. This was sabotage, undertaken without regard to the consequences for our Royal Air Force and our ability to defend our nation. As a result, there must be consequences for those responsible. Can the Minister explain how on earth these saboteurs were able not only to break through the perimeter fence, but cover a considerable distance to reach the precious airfield tarmac, inflict damage to our airframes, and then get out of the base, all without being intercepted? What steps is he taking to ensure rapid reinforcement of perimeter and internal fencing, not just at the specific point of incursion at Brize Norton, as he describes, but throughout the base and at all other UK bases? What is he doing to ensure sufficient military policing personnel are in place to enforce security and that they have access to effective countermeasure technology? On the drone threat, which is relevant, he knows how quickly military technology is moving. In December, I asked him about protection of UK bases in a written question and whether he would accelerate testing of directed energy weapons such as lasers for drone interception on our military bases. He said this work was in development. What progress has he made in the 6 months since? Now, protection of our bases is not just a priority on the UK mainland. Given the confirmation of reports that a man allegedly linked to Iran has been arrested on suspicion of espionage and terrorism offences in Cyprus, can he confirm that all measures being taken to reinforce UK bases will be replicated with the same urgency throughout our overseas basing, including in particular at Akrotiri? Now, regarding the impact of this attack on the RAF, can he confirm what the financial cost will be? In particular, can he explain the immediate operational impact on the RAF? He says there's been no impact on planned operations from Brize Norton, but he will know this could still mean that task lines were unintentionally reallocated to cover for the damaged aircraft. So how long have the two aircraft in question been out of action for, if at all, and what has been the wider operational impact? Turning to the perpetrators, Mr. Deputy Speaker, what progress has been made on catching those responsible, and have there been any arrests? And does he agree that one way to defend our bases is to deter future incursion by ensuring that the full force of the law is felt by the individual saboteurs in question? And will he ensure everything is done to work with the CPS to ensure that an appropriately robust response is delivered to the offenders, noting, for example, that Section 1 of the Aviation and Maritime Security Act 1990 provides an offence of action that can endanger the safe operation of aircraft carrying a maximum sentence of life imprisonment, and that the National Security Act Section 12 on sabotage again carries a penalty of up to life imprisonment. On the review, this is welcome, but it needs to report urgently. Can he confirm who will lead it and how quickly it will report? And on the important issue of personnel, will the review consider the way responsibility for security at RAF bases is divided between RAF Police, the RAF Regiment, MPGS and private contractors? Can I join the Minister in condemning without reservation Palestine Action and that their role in this attack on the Royal Air Force was totally unacceptable? We welcome the steps taken to proscribe this organisation today. I also welcome the Minister's commitment to strengthening force protection more widely in the Middle East, including through the deployment of RAF Typhoons and particularly in light of the breaking news in Qatar. To conclude, Mr Deputy Speaker, the Minister is entirely right at this time that the MOD's priority must be the protection of our people and bases in the region. But in his opening remarks about the airstrikes against 3 Iranian nuclear facilities, and indeed throughout his multiple questioning on today's media round, it was totally unclear whether the government supports or opposes those US airstrikes. The Minister was asked 7 times on LBC whether the government supports or opposes US military action. He failed to answer once. He is now in front of Parliament. These are matters of the utmost importance to the security of our nation. He is the Minister for the Armed Forces being asked about the action of the armed forces of our closest military ally. So I conclude with a straight question. Does he support the US bombing of Iranian nuclear facilities, yes or no?
Minister of State, Luke Pollard.
Thank you, Mr Deputy Speaker. And can I thank the honourable gentleman opposite for the tone in which he has asked his questions and for his support for Armed Forces personnel. I think it is really important at this time that this House sends a united message that we will protect our people wherever they are in the world, but especially those people serving to keep us safe and keep our allies safe in the Middle East. In relation to his questions, I agree with him. I expect strong consequences for those responsible for the damage to our RAF Voyager aircraft at Brize Norton. The investigation is proceeding. There's a number of investigations underway. The one commissioned by the Defence Secretary to look into what happened at Brize Norton, to learn the lessons. I can already report that improvements at the point of entry have been made at Brize Norton, but also to look at what lessons can be applied across UK military estates in the UK and overseas. I know that he, like I, have a strong interest in drones, and he is right to pursue the questions around how we have counter UAS activities. He will also know that since he asked that question to me a number of months ago, we published the Strategic Defence Review. In the Strategic Defence Review, we outline how we are looking to expand and roll out faster the deployment of the Dragonfire directed energy weapons system. So it will now feature in a funded programme on 4 of the Royal Navy destroyers. That will be a test bed for this technology that we believe has wider application, including against drones elsewhere across the defence estates. I can confirm that in relation to the RAF Voyagers, that the activities of the RAF were not affected because we were able to move assets to backfill those roles. That's one of the key parts of having an agile air force, that we're able to do that. The investigation into those aircraft on the damage that was conducted by the people who penetrated the security is ongoing, and I will report when that is further firmed up. In relation to counter-terrorism policing, it is right that we give the counterterrorism police the space to conduct their investigation into the incident at Brize Norton, and he will appreciate why I won't be able to provide a running commentary on that. And certainly when it comes to the deployment of RAF Typhoons to the region, we currently have around 14 Typhoons at RAF Akrotiri, and the Prime Minister has made it very clear that should further resources be required, that we will not hesitate in rolling further resources forward. And in relation to the position on the US strikes, the UK did not participate in them, and the UK and the US have a shared ambition that there should not be a nuclear bomb held by the Iranian regime.
Stella Creasy.
Thank you, Mr. Deputy Speaker. I think we all recognise that events are moving very quickly, but can I ask the Minister just to confirm two issues for many of us? Number one, we know that the Qataris were notified and were able to notify the Americans of the planned attack on their base. Can he tell us, or is he in a position to tell us at the moment, whether any notification was given to this country about the escalation in attacks? And secondly, can he say a bit more then about his plans for the NATO summit and our cooperation with our European counterparts? The events of this week show very clearly that we need in Europe to be able to act strategically to defend our interests and to work together and to step up that work. Can you say a bit more about what he's planning to do as well, please?
Okay.
Honourable friend for her question. In relation to the events in the Middle East, she will appreciate that I will need to be briefed further before I can provide an accurate update to the House. But when it comes to the NATO summit, she will be pleased to see that thanks to the EU reset deal that was secured by the Prime Minister, we have the opportunity now to participate further in EU defence programmes, to join up. The Strategic Defence Review makes it very clear that our priority is the Euro-Atlantic area for our security, and the largest threat facing us at the moment is Russia. But of course, Russia works in collaboration with a number of countries around the world, and collectively they pose a threat to the rules-based order. We will continue to work with our European allies and indeed our American friends to ensure that we have peace and security across the continent.
Liberal Democrat spokesman Callum Miller.
Thank you, Mr. Deputy Speaker. I also thank the Minister for the advanced side of his statement and, of course, understand the update that we've just received on developments in Qatar. In this Armed Forces Week, I want to begin by expressing my thanks to all those brave and committed personnel who serve in the defence of our nation. They deserve not only our thanks and praise, but the knowledge that just as they keep us safe, so too the government has invested to keep them safe through adequate force protection. I wish to address briefly the statement on developments in Gaza and the breaking news that Bahrain has also sounded alerts pending a potential attack there. Of course, I welcome the commitment to the protection of our forces and assets. It is the first duty of government. However, this development reflects our fears following the US action on Saturday that this may be turning into a protracted full-scale conflict. So I'd ask the Minister, what risk does he now assess there is against US allies in the region? Will the Minister confirm that UK jets will only be used to protect UK assets and personnel? And can he tell the House what steps are being taken to signal to Iran that the UK's operations are limited to this protective operation, so it is clear that we are not being drawn into the offensive operations launched by Israel and the US? The Minister also said in his update that Akrotiri had not been breached, but can he confirm to the House that none of the other bases in Cyprus were breached in instance over the weekend? Returning to the full statement, in last month's Strategic Defence Review, the review's authors explicitly highlighted the need to bolster the security of our Air Force. And yet not even 20 days later, we've already witnessed an egregious breach of security at Brize Norton and the damage of RAF planes. This was a brazen and illegal act of vandalism and raises alarming questions about the level of security at armed force bases across the country. The Minister described the Home Secretary's decision today to prescribe Palestine Action. Can he provide the House with a clear understanding of the evidence used to judge that it has crossed the threshold set out in the Terrorism Act? And returning to force protection, I'd welcome the Minister's response to these questions. What initial assessment can the Government provide on how this breach was able to occur at Brize Norton? When does the Government believe the damaged planes will be able to return to service? And is the Minister satisfied that he can sustain the immediate improvements he described so as to assure the physical integrity of military bases across the rest of the country, including at army and naval bases, against the full spectrum of threats?
Minister.
Can I thank him for his support and his words in support of our personnel? Armed Forces Week is an opportunity for us to thank all those men and women who serve in our armed forces, to celebrate their service and to make the case that a strong armed forces is not only good to secure our security, it is good as an engine for growth and something that we can all take pride in. And I look forward to attending the Armed Forces Day event in Plymouth, as I'm sure members across the House will be doing so in their constituencies. In response to his questions, the Foreign Secretary was very clear in his 7 hours of negotiations with the Iranian Foreign Minister in Geneva this weekend about the purpose of UK military assets in the region and also about the importance of de-escalation and the importance of Iran returning to the negotiating table, to getting serious, negotiating in good faith and reaching a diplomatic conclusion to this crisis. There is not a military retaliation option that delivers a solution to this crisis. We've made that very clear to Iran, as have our European E3 allies and our Gulf partners, and we will continue to do so. In relation to the questions on prescription, can I encourage him or direct him towards the statutory, to the written ministerial statement tabled by the Home Secretary today that answers a number of those concerns that he has. From the Home Secretary's point of view, it is now past a threshold in which action was necessary, and that is why she intends to take that decision to prescribe Palestine Action in the way that she has announced today. And in relation to the breach at Brize Norton, he asked about the Strategic Defence Review. Indeed, on page 115 of the Strategic Defence Review, it notes RAF Brize Norton should be a high priority for investment and improvement, a statement that we adopted in full when we adopted the Strategic Defence Review and its recommendations. And when the investigation concludes in full, we'll be able to give further details to the House of improvements that we wish to make, not just at Brize, but elsewhere around the defence estate as well.
Kim Johnson.
Thank you, Mr Deputy Speaker. I'm concerned by the government's knee-jerk reaction to prescribe Palestine Action as a terrorist organisation. This country has a long history of protest. As I mentioned in this chamber last week, some on British military sites and none have been branded as terrorists. Last Friday, Palestine Action spray painted 2 aircraft at Brize Norton. The first time the group had taken action on British military land. Yes, guilty of criminal damage, but not as a terrorist. Even the former Justice Secretary Lord Falconer has stated his action would not justify prescription. So the evidence show it. So can the Minister set out what steps his department will take to ensure peaceful protest activity is not wrongly categorised as a national security threat?
Minister.
Can I say to the honourable member that as there is an ongoing counter-terrorism inquiry into the activities of Palestine Action, who conducted a direct attack against UK military assets at a time of heightened tensions, that it would be inappropriate for me to go into the full details, but may I say to her that the prescription of Palestine Action has been something that has been considered over a long period of time by my colleagues in the Home Office. It is a decision that they have taken after considering the facts, those in the public domain and those perhaps held privately, and we are certain that this is the right course of action to keep our country safe in these difficult times.
Dr. Andrew Murison.
Thank you, Deputy Speaker. My constituents in military establishments around Salisbury Plain won't see this as an act of vandalism. They'll see it as criminal damage. They'll see it as a sabotage. They'll see it as terrorism. And the Minister, who I respect, does himself no good by trying to downplay the seriousness of this. There are 2,900 Ministry of Defence policemen in this country. They have in recent years largely been employed in investigating relatively low-level fraud within the Ministry of Defence and in military establishments across this country with a relatively low conviction rate. Does the Minister agree with me that they would be much better employed looking after our critical national infrastructure and military bases, including in my constituency, right up and down the land? And will he consider ensuring that warranted officers are able to do a job of work for the MOD that cannot be done by regional forces, and I am very confident that they would welcome the challenge.
Minister.
Well, can I thank the right honourable member, who I also have a lot of time for. At no point have I sought to downplay the activities of Palestine Action. Indeed, today the government has taken the strong step of prescribing Palestine Action precisely because their activities are a threat to our national security. It is for that reason that the Home Secretary has taken the decision that she has. In relation to the military bases in near his constituency, Salisbury Plain, indeed the military bases in the constituency I represent in Plymouth, the review of our security arrangements covers all military bases. And certainly from the Defence Secretary to the Chief of Defence Staff and others within the Ministry of Defence, we are looking carefully at what lessons can be learned, what improvements can be put in place, and noting the conclusions of the Strategic Defence Review that we need to invest more in this area. How can we implement the findings of the SDR as quickly as we can? In relation to the points about policing, I'll be very happy to discuss them further with him because I know he's an expert in this area.
Samantha Niblett.
Deputy Speaker, as I'm partaking in the Armed Forces Parliamentary Scheme this year with the RAF, I have had the greatest pleasure and incredible privilege of visiting many RAF bases across this last year, and I am in absolute awe of those that put their lives on the line to defend us. And the events of last week were not only a breach of our defences, they were a massive, massive demonstration of disrespect for these serving personnel who will have been delivering aid to people in Gaza. So does the Minister agree with me that we should be thanking them for their service and it was the right thing to do to prescribe that group?
Minister.
Well, can I thank my more friend for her question? She is exactly right. The disrespect shown to our forces and their personnel, the threat to our national security posed by breaching the security of a military base and approaching military assets is something that we take incredibly seriously. Certainly the British public want to know that the full force of the law is being used to locate and to bring those responsible for justice, and I can confirm that the investigation is ongoing, and the steps the Home Secretary has taken today to prescribe Palestine Action, I think, are entirely consistent with the severity and the seriousness of their activities.
Graham Ledbetter.
Thank you, Mr Deputy Speaker. The actions of Palestine Action at Brize Norton were utterly reprehensible last week and will have caused fear and alarm for military personnel and their families the length of the country, including in my own constituency where I have 3 substantial military bases. At the same time, though, the UK government is not ruling out engaging in further military conflict in the Middle East, and the Minister mentioned the importance of a rules-based order in international terms. How can the UK government seriously be considering engaging in further military intervention abroad in those circumstances when we have years of underinvestment that has diminished security bases right here and which causes concern for our armed forces personnel and their families?
Minister.
Well, can I thank him for his question and for his obvious concern for our armed forces. The statement that I made today, indeed the statements made by the Prime Minister, the Foreign Secretary and the Defence Secretary over the past few days, underline clearly that the use of UK military force, the deployment of UK military force in the Middle East is there to defend our people and our bases. It is worth reminding ourselves why we have a UK military presence in the Middle East. That is to support regional stability. It is to undertake counter-Daesh operations in Iraq and Syria. They're the same operations that help keep the streets of Britain safe from terrorists. So that is the reason we have a presence in the Middle East, securing our allies. It is the reason why the Prime Minister flowed forward additional jets to provide cover and support for our armed forces personnel. And as we assess what is taking place currently, we reserve the right to make further military changes to secure to ensure our people are kept safe.
Alex Baker.
Thank you, Mr Deputy Speaker. May I pay tribute to the role of Standing Joint Command based in Aldershot in their contribution to UK resilience. And in Armed Forces Week, may I also pay tribute to the over 3,000 serving personnel in my constituency, the home of the British Army. The Minister's been really clear what force protection looks like when it comes to bases, but what will this look like for garrison towns like mine?
Well, can I thank my friend who, in her short time in this House, has become a real champion of our armed forces, not just in her constituency, but across the country. She's right to pay tribute to SJC in Aldershot. General Charlie Collins is a superb leader of that part of our armed forces, and the SDR makes very clear that we wish to further enhance and upgrade the capabilities of UK Homeland Defence, and we will do so. In relation to the security improvements that the review will seek to identify, that will be undertaken based on the incident at Brize Norton, but also looking at what threats we are facing, not just at that particular RAF base, but the threats facing all UK military establishments, and I'm certain that I will be back at the House reporting progress in due course.
Ben, objecting.
Thank you, Mr Deputy Speaker. Given the manner of infiltration at RAF Brize Norton, I am concerned that the MPGS across the defence estate is neither resourced sufficiently nor given the authorisation to engage potential saboteurs. The scope of their role only allows them to use lethal force if there is a direct threat to life. RAF Whitton is in my constituency, which has the same issue. It's protected by the MPGS and augmented by serving personnel. Given the sensitive information it provides as the home of Defence Intelligence, can the Minister offer a guarantee that security levels there will be ramped up? And also, RAF Molesworth and RAF Alconbury are both also in my constituency. As US AFE bases, they operate under US rules of engagement, and so lethal force is permitted at a far lower level. Why are US bases in the UK defended to a higher level?
Well, in the spirit of cross-party consensus, can I also praise him for the way that he has, in a short time here, made a huge contribution to the way that we look at defence. We've made no cuts to the MGPS since taking office. Indeed, the opposite is true. We seek to enhance and further support that. The review that the Defence Secretary has commissioned will look at all military bases and what lessons can be learned from this incident and how we can improve it. Certainly, to date, there has been a lot of focus on Article 5 of the NATO treaty about how we will come to the aid of others if attacked, but we should also have an equal focus on Article 3, how we ensure our own homeland defence, and that is something that the SDR makes very clear and something this government takes very seriously to implement.
Louise Jones.
Thank you, Mr Deputy Speaker. The Minister will know from my earlier question regarding force protection how important seriously to take that issue, and it is right that that is the main focus today. But if I may, I would like to address one issue that reared its head over the weekend as one of the only female veterans in this Parliament. Unfortunately, certain pathetic little people took this incident and decided to come out of the woodwork and criticise people for doing their job whilst being female. Yeah. I know, as a woman serving in the armed forces, every opportunity that has been given to women, we have earned through serving on operations and proving time and time again we are worthy to be there. I was very conscious when I was serving that I had to be perfect. Any fault or flaw that I showed would not be held just against me, but against all the women that I was serving with. Could the Minister stand up and say now to every woman serving in the armed forces that we respect and recognise their service?
Yes. Minister.
Where are they? Can I commend my more friend for her words there and for her service? It is outrageous, the comments that were made at the weekend about our serving military. I notice there's not a single Reform MP here for this statement. Let me be absolutely clear. I believe on a cross-party basis that all parties present in the chamber today back our forces. We don't take to Twitter to mock them. We respect service on a cross-party basis. We do not belittle senior officers based on their gender or experience. We need to be better than this. Just as we ask our armed forces to address cultural concerns, we need to be alive to that in our politics as well, calling out misogyny wherever it rears its ugly head. But let's send a united message from all those parties here present today that we back our armed forces, we want to see change in culture in our armed forces, and we value the contribution of everyone who serves, especially those brave women who have done so much to secure our national security in recent years.
Order, one moment. On this Armed Forces Day of all days, I think it's entirely appropriate for the Chair to have allowed the Minister to have responded to that question, even though it is not strictly in line with the statement. But from now on, given the time that we've got available, I think we have to come back to the statement itself. Mr. Thomas.
I'm not sure this is appropriate anymore, Mr. Deputy Speaker, because ironically on Saturday the member for Boston and Skegness demonstrated his ignorance of RAF force protection by tweeting that Group Captain Louise Henton's background in human resources led to last week's infiltration of RAF Brize Norton. It was a disgusting attack on a senior officer and my previous squadron commander, who has dedicated her career to the Armed Forces service and to bettering the lives, the lived experience of our personnel. Will the Minister join me, therefore, in thanking all members of our armed forces today and in condemning the remarks from the Deputy Leader of Reform?
Minister.
Alive to your words, Mr. Deputy Speaker. Let me just say I agree with the honourable gentleman, as I agreed with my honourable friend on this side about the comments here. It is so important that when we make the case for respecting our armed forces, we recognise that those who serve are not able to respond to comments made in the political arena. They're prevented from doing so. Therefore, it is members of this House that must have our armed forces back. We must be able to call out that behaviour that is not acceptable, just as we back our forces. And I hope that all serving members of our armed forces will be able to see today, in this chamber today, the full-throttled support for this House for those people who serve.
David Taylor.
Thank you, Mr. Deputy Speaker. I commend the government for the swift action it took to prescribe Palestine Action after their brazen actions at Brize Norton. I would also like to raise concerns about another related group called the Islamic Human Rights Commission. Now, they have expressed support for proscribed terrorist groups and use UK platforms to spread anti-British propaganda. There is strong evidence that they are directly linked to the Iranian regime, and indeed placards celebrating the Ayatollah with the term being on the right side of history were seen at protests at the weekend. Now, what assessment has the government made of threats to national security beyond Palestine Action, including of this group?
Minister.
Well, can I thank my honourable friend for that question? I'm afraid as a government minister, the usual line about prescription is that we don't comment about prescription, except today where I have been able to confirm a group has been prescribed from the Home Secretary's decision. Can I encourage my honourable friend to have a conversation with the Security Minister who is sat next to me here?
Sir Julian Lewis.
I must say I'm very surprised that the Home Secretary chose to put out a written statement rather than making an oral statement when we could have put some of these points to her about what exactly qualifies a group to be prescribed as a terrorist organisation. I entirely agree with the sentiment in the House that Palestine Action sabotaged these planes, caused criminal damage, could be liable to a charge of criminal conspiracy, and that the people who did the damage should be pursued for remuneration to the point of bankruptcy. But it would do the country and the government no favours if they were to lose in court a challenge to the process of prescription. Because whereas the secret sabotage of planes would certainly have been an act of terrorism leading to prescription, the fact is this was a performative act which they announced they had done. So make sure, is my advice to the government, that when these people are prosecuted, it is not solely on the grounds of committing terrorist acts rather than committing treasonous acts of sabotage.
Minister.
Can I reassure the right honourable gentleman that as part of the prescription process, there will be a full debate in this House in the coming days as part of that process. So he and all members of this House will have an opportunity to debate the prescription decision the Home Secretary has taken in full in due course. And can I tell him that the decision to prescribe has not been made without considerable thought, without reflecting on the information that is in the public domain and those that perhaps is not, and underpinned by a very serious legal process, because I would agree with his concern, but I seek to reassure him that those matters have been considered as part of the process.
Arthur.
Thank you, Mr Deputy Speaker. I have a substantial military footprint in my constituency, not least Redford and Drycorn Barracks, so I absolutely welcome the statement. So 2 questions. First is on the situation overseas. So I really welcome the comments about force protection, but it'd be good to hear if the families back home are being kept up to date, because I'm sure they're worried about the relatives, about our service personnel, their relatives overseas. And the situation in Brize Norton, of course, the attack was ill-informed, ill-advised, by a group that frankly revels in lawbreaking. You can see that on their website. The irony is that all of us here oppose what Netanyahu is doing in Gaza in terms of the humanitarian situation. All of us, we're united in that. And all of us as well, we're here to protect and respect people's right to protest. But that can't extend to leaving our armed forces personnel feeling threatened or equipment being put out of use, even temporarily. So I welcome the base review, and I don't doubt that will include the bases in my constituency. But it'd be good to hear about what's happening off base in terms of the families. We're getting fresh advice to families, and when it comes to upgrading those military homes, we'll be looking at security to make sure they're kept safe.
Minister.
Can I thank him for his question and for the support that he provides to armed forces in his constituency. The force protection measures that we have introduced as a government are there to keep our people safe. We're at the highest level of force protection for deployed forces in the Middle East, and as part of that, we have sought to draw down those non-essential personnel to make sure that the footprint is as appropriate as possible. That includes where there would be families, but they'll be very limited given the theatre that we are talking about here. And certainly when it comes to investment in military housing that he mentioned, this is a priority for this government because frankly what we inherited, the state of those homes was not good enough, and that's why we're investing £1.5 billion extra in this Parliament to give homes really fit for heroes.
Liz Savile-Roberts.
Direct action at military bases is nothing new. We remember with respect the women who marched from Wales to Greenham Common and the thousands of women who joined them. They didn't just march, they pulled down fences, they criminally damaged infrastructure. So does the Minister recognise the risk implicit in prescribing protest groups calling out war as terrorist organisations?
Minister.
Can I say to the honourable member that they're not a protest group. They are people that have undertaken severe criminal damage to military assets. They're people who are increasingly using violence as part of their modus operandi. The decision that the Home Secretary has taken has not been taken lightly and reflects the seriousness of the intent of that organisation. I welcome free speech, I welcome debate and challenge, but vandalising RAF jets is not free speech. That is criminal damage, that is interventions on a military base, that is, as I say in my statement, not only epically stupid, but also a threat to our national security, and the Home Secretary was right to prescribe them.
Alan Strickland.
Thank you, Mr Deputy Speaker. Can I thank the Defence Secretary for the urgent review he's launched and the Minister for the leadership he's showing. I join members from across his House in condemning the appalling attack at Brize Norton, which I was privileged to visit earlier this year with the RAF parliamentary scheme. But as well as attacking military installations, Palestine Action have launched violent assaults on defence businesses, including in my constituency. So as well as this rightful review of military base protection, will ministers from the Ministry of Defence and the Home Office be also reviewing what additional security measures and advice through the MOD, the police and other bodies our defence manufacturers may need in the coming years as we ramp up defence production?
Minister.
Can I thank him for the championing of defence that he undertakes as a Member of Parliament for his constituency? And he's exactly right to highlight it's not just the military bases that Palestine Action have targeted, it is defence businesses, businesses employing people up and down the country, contributing to our national defence. He's right to do so. I can reassure the honourable gentleman that conversations between the Ministry of Defence, the Home Office and police forces and those in our defence supply chain happen regularly, and we will continue to keep them abreast of developments and concerns that as we may have them.
Sir Simon Hall.
Thank you, Mr Deputy Speaker. And with a female officer commanding Blandford Camp, I echo totally the comments made by the Honourable Lady for North East Derbyshire. Could I invite the Minister? There will be a lot of concern from personnel within the camp and those who live in the communities around them, that they are now targets for either homegrown domestic terror or potentially for those who may be described as sleepers in our country from countries that do, and regimes that do not wish us well. Could he find a way to confidentially ensure that members of Parliament across the House that have military bases within their constituencies, such as I do in North Dorset, are advised whether those installations are, whether they pass the test of security, whether work needs to be done and in what time frame as to what it is, because there will be a lot of anxiety amongst those communities, and MPs across the House can play a very important part in allaying those concerns within their communities.
Minister.
Well, can I thank the right honourable gentleman for the way that he has approached his question. I share his concerns to make sure that members of Parliament are adequately informed about defence. Indeed, it is the Defence Secretary's intent when we took office to renew and refresh the relationship between the Ministry of Defence and Parliament with a more open conversation. We are endeavouring to do that with further briefings, and I will take his suggestion on board as we look at how we implement the review.
Amanda Martin.
Thank you, Mr Deputy Speaker. Firstly, on Armed Forces Day, I want to thank all who serve and have served, including my own son, and recognise the huge contribution made by our armed forces alongside all service families in Portsmouth, the very proud home of the Royal Navy. And secondly, I'd like to say a huge thank you for the Armed Forces Day on Saturday and for being able to take part in the flag raising in my city to show my gratitude and respect to all those serving. Mr Deputy Speaker, given the fast-changing landscape alongside the recent disrespectful incident at RAF Brize Norton, with so many armed forces personnel based in Portsmouth and personnel from Portsmouth based around the globe, can the Minister confirm whether wider action is being taken to review and strengthen security across all of our UK and abroad military bases, and therefore what force protection measures are in place to keep our personnel and their families safe both here and abroad and in my city?
Well, as the MP for Devonport, can I say to the MP for one of the Portsmouth seats just how proud we are of our Royal Navy, no matter where those ships or capabilities are based. It is certainly true that the review commissioned by the Defence Secretary looks not just at what happened at RAF Brize Norton, but will look at application of that lesson across the defence estate, because the force protection of our people, both home and abroad, is a priority for this government, and we'll be undertaking that review at pace. And I believe I will be back in front of the House in due course to announce the further measures, I suspect.
Sean Berry.
Thank you, Mr Deputy Speaker. On the prescription of Palestine Action, I would like to remind the Minister there are a number of recent examples of juries finding defendants in similar cases to the Brize Norton incident not guilty based on a necessity defence, as people believe they were acting from a desire to prevent war crimes. Now, given these juries were clearly able to draw a proportionate line between direct action protest and serious crime, would the Minister agree that use of the Terrorism Act in this case in fact sets a dangerous and worrying precedent?
Minister.
Well, can I say to the honourable member, the dangerous and worrying precedent was set by Palestine Action when they breached an RAF base, when they vandalised Royal Air Force planes. I entirely respect those that wish to protest, that wish to raise arguments, that wish to use freedom of speech. Let me be entirely clear, vandalising and attacking RAF planes is not the way to do that. Indeed, it poses a direct threat to our national security. That, and for many other reasons that you'll appreciate that Mr Deputy Speaker, that I may not be able to go into in this House, is the reason why the Home Secretary has taken that decision. And when the debate comes forward on prescription, as it will in the coming days, I hope that she'll be able to contribute to that debate and further understand why that decision was taken by the Home Secretary.
Luke Meyer.
Thank you, Mr Deputy Speaker. I think given the gravity of the emerging situation, I don't think there's anyone in this House who would begrudge the Minister for needing to return to be fully briefed on what is happening. But while he is here, can I just confirm whether wider action will be taken to review security across all our bases in the UK from extremist threats in the light of last week's incident?
Minister.
Can I thank him for the encouragement to head back to the Ministry of Defence? I will be hightailing it back there as soon as this statement is over, Mr Deputy Speaker. The review commissioned by the Defence Secretary will look at what happened at RAF Brize Norton, but also what lessons can be applied to our military bases and the defence estate across the UK and for our overseas bases, and keeping our people safe, keeping our ability to protect our country safe and free from interference is vital for this country, and that is the reason why we've undertaken that review.
Dr. Neil Shastri-Hurst.
Thank you very much. When organisations such as Palestine Action break into military bases, damage secure facilities and put our personnel at risk, they aren't just protesting, they are sabotaging. With that in mind, if there were any other extremists that carried out this task, they would be rightly described as domestic terrorists. Does the Minister agree with me? This isn't legitimate protest, it is domestic terrorism, and that any attack on our armed forces infrastructure should be seen as thus.
Minister.
Well, can I thank him for those comments? I often find the phrase "flip it to see it" is a useful one to identify whether there is inbuilt bias in how we approach a topic. As the Honourable Gentleman has suggested, if you were to flip Palestine Action to a number of other groups, it would clearly be regarded with the same seriousness as we are approaching it as this government. And I'm very glad that the strong message on a cross-party basis has gone out today that what we saw in Brize Norton is unacceptable and that it is right that we take measures to keep our national security safe.
Jeremy Corbyn.
Could I ask the Minister if he would think carefully of the contributions made today by the member for New Forest East, Liverpool, Riverside and Brighton concerning naming somebody as a terrorist when they're in fact people that are protesting about the appalling events that are going on in Gaza and the treatment of children by the Israeli forces. And it's surprising that in the Minister's statement describing a lot about the military situation all over the Middle East, he said not one word about the illegal occupation of the West Bank, the illegal occupation of Gaza, and the deliberate starvation, contrary to all aspects of international law, of the civilian population of Gaza. Can't we deal with the fundamental issue, which is the illegal activities of the Israeli Defence Force in both those scenarios?
Minister.
Well, the Right Honourable Gentleman speaks passionately for the Palestinian people and has done for a very long time. This statement was not about Gaza, it was about the force protection of our military units in the Middle East. But as he has given me the opportunity to do so, let me say very clearly that it is this government's position that what we see in Gaza is intolerable. We need to see a restoration of the ceasefire. We need to see Hamas release all the remaining hostages, and we need to see aid at scale delivered to the Palestinian people on a step towards the lasting peace that comes with a two-state solution. There is a lot of work to do in that respect. But may I also, on the point of when he uses the word terrorists, I was very careful with the language that I used in this statement. It is powers under the Terrorism Act of 2000 that are being used. And when the Home Secretary issued the written ministerial statement, she was also very careful about the language she used in the fact that the actions of Palestine Action has now crossed the threshold under provisions of that act, and that is why she is taking action today.
Jerome Mayhew.
Thank you, Mr Deputy Speaker. The Armed Forces Minister was asked a direct question by the Shadow Secretary of State for Defence, and it was simply this: does the government support the United States' actions in Iran over the weekend? And the answer that he gave was that he agreed that Iran should not have a nuclear weapon. Well, that's not the answer to the question that he was asked. So what is the answer? Does the government actually know whether or not it supports the US action? And if it does know its own mind, why won't he tell us?
Minister.
I think the Foreign Secretary was very clear when he was at the dispatch box for his statement earlier today that the UK and the US share the same long-term ambition to ensure that Iran does not have a nuclear weapon.
Tom Gordon.
Mr Deputy Speaker, let me share, associate myself with remarks made about Armed Forces Week from members across this House and the condemnation of the escalation of the situation in the Middle East. I wondered if the Minister might be able to explain to me if there will be any additional security measures at the Army Foundation College in Harrogate, given the unique nature of what is happening there.
Well, can I thank him for raising the college at Harrogate? It is a really important part of the defence family, and I certainly know that the Minister for Veterans, sat next to me on the front bench here, takes a special keen interest in the affairs of Harrogate. As this review is conducted, and we will see what lessons can be learnt from the incident at Brize Norton, we'll be taking measures possibly on all military installations, including training establishments across the country, if that is suitable. But I'm certain that the Minister for Veterans would welcome a further conversation with the honourable gentleman in relation to Harrogate in particular.
Mike Wood.
Thank you, Mr Deputy Speaker. Mr Deputy Speaker, you will remember that Willie Whitelaw famously offers his resignation after an intruder made his way into Buckingham Palace. Has the Minister considered his own position?
Yeah. Minister.
Given the seriousness of the issues that we are talking about today, my focus, as the focus of every defence minister is ensuring the protection of our people. I understand that the honourable gentleman is looking for a soundbite on this matter, but I believe he may have wasted a question where he should have been talking about how we can look at protecting our people, both in the Middle East and back home, in a secure way.
Charlie Maynard.
Thank you, Mr Deputy Speaker. I would like to join with all the members in this House in thanking everyone who worked so hard at RAF Brize Norton in my Witney constituency, led very effectively by Group Captain Lou Henton, who is really an example to all of us. I also very much respect and admire how the community in Carterton, right next to RAF Brize Norton, has really pulled together at this stressful time. They've done a fantastic job. Security at the base has been really underinvested for a long time. Like many Carterton residents, I've walked the perimeter quite a few times, and that fence is not formidable. What assurance can the Minister give that this airbase and other defence facilities around the country and internationally will have their defences strengthened for air, sea and land attack?
Oh, can I thank him for raising the concerns of the local community around Brize Norton? I would be very happy to meet him to discuss the details of what occurred from our point of view and what measures can be put in place. The initial actions taken by the Defence Secretary has helped identify a number of immediate steps that we are taking to secure that base further, but I'd be very happy speaking to him about it further. He is right that much of our armed forces estate and our armed forces have been hollowed out and underfunded for far too long. It's precisely for that reason that I welcome the increase in defence spending to 2.5% of GDP by April 2027. Our armed forces are brilliant, but it's time they had first-class facilities.
John Cooper.
Thank you, Mr Deputy Speaker. Mr Hamza Yousaf, the former First Minister of Scotland, invited people in this place to check their moral compass over the prescription of Palestine Action, but I think we've heard here today that no one really is seriously suggesting that these people are anything other than saboteurs, and anyone who expresses sympathy for them has their moral compass, as we would say in Scotland, spinning like a peary. Mr Yousaf further suggested that American aircraft using Prestwick in Scotland could leave us open to charges of war crimes. I think this is absolutely nonsense. I wonder if the Minister agrees with me on that point. But Prestwick Airport is owned by the Scottish Government. In fact, it's a civilian airport, although it is heavily used by our allies, America and Canada particularly. What can we do to protect those aircraft at that civilian airbase?
Minister.
Well, can I thank him for raising the base in question and the airfield in question, sorry. It is a model that we may look to develop further civil-military cooperation using civilian infrastructure for military purposes, especially as we look to increase our war-fighting readiness in the future. So the lessons about security need to be applied. Luckily, many of our European allies operate civil-military airfields, and so there's good models that we can look to as to how we do that. But let me say clearly in relation to the accusation that he raised on behalf of a member of the Scottish Parliament, the UK military only operates in compliance with international humanitarian law. It is absolutely vital. If an order is given that is contrary to international humanitarian law, our armed forces are not required to follow it. It is that high standard that means our armed forces are respected worldwide.
Robin Swan.
Thank you very much, Mr Deputy Speaker. The statement speaks of enhanced security measures across the whole of the defence. Can I ask the Minister, in that case, will he review the recent decision to downgrade some of the security measures in Northern Ireland bases and removing it away from the permanent base in regards to that, but also can he look through this strategic defence review and what we're actually working up to allow our RAF and our personnel to respond quickly and effectively to further utilisation of Aldergrove.
Minister.
Can I thank him for raising the security changes that we've introduced in bases in reserve centres in Northern Ireland? It's certainly true that we had reservists guarding largely empty buildings, and that was something that we have addressed with increase in physical security measures to ensure that they are safe. As part of the review the Defence Secretary has commissioned, we're looking across the defence estate, but I'll be very happy to have a further conversation with him about Northern Ireland should he want to.
Dr Ben Spencer.
Thank you, Mr Deputy Speaker. Where an extremist minority spread division and intimidation, and now even attack our military, prioritising foreign regions and their interests above our own, it is an attack on our country, it is treason. The primary job of our government is to protect the UK, and I welcome the announcement today that the government is taking action to do just that. I was proud to celebrate Armed Forces Week at the flag raising ceremony in Runnymede this morning. Will he pay tribute with me, join me in paying tribute to all our Armed Forces staff and the work they do for all of us?
Yeah. Minister.
Well, can I thank him for the support he has provided to our armed forces in Armed Forces Week. This is a week to thank those people who serve and to celebrate their service. And it seems only appropriate on a day where I am at the dispatch box talking about the necessary force protection of our people that we take that responsibility doubly seriously this week. Certainly it is true that the shared British values that I believe, even though there may be party political differences between members across this House, that we all share. One of those is respect for the rule of law, and one of those is respect for our armed forces. The pride that I have in our armed forces as the Armed Forces Minister is the same pride that I see on a cross-party basis towards those men and women who serve in our forces. And let's hope that across the country in Armed Forces Week, we can all join in thanking everyone who serve and the families that stand behind those in uniform.
Dr Al Pinkerton.
Mr Deputy Speaker, as the MP for Surrey Heath, I'm very proudly also the MP for all of the recruits, the cadets, the staff and officers at ATC Purbright and also RMA Sandhurst, a privilege that I share with my honourable friend, the member for Bracknell. I'm sure everyone on those bases will be very reassured to hear of the work that's being done to look at the security of bases. And I think that's particularly the case when bases are highly integrated into local communities. And I wonder whether he might also be able to offer some reassurance to local cadet forces as well, who wear uniform on our behalf. But if I could perhaps focus my question on our forces in Cyprus. The honourable gentleman mentioned the fact that Akrotiri had not in any way been infiltrated, but can he also offer the same assurance of Deucalion, but also our other sites on Cyprus as well? And what is being done by the government to ensure that all of those people in uniform on Cyprus, whether they wear blue berets or not, are being properly briefed and properly secured on our behalf?
Minister.
In the spirit of cross-party support, can I thank him for the support that he offers those at the training establishments in his constituency. We have some truly remarkable people in our armed forces, and it is good to see cross-party support for their work. In relation to the sovereign base areas that we have in Cyprus, it is essential that we not only look at how we can protect them, but also how we can protect them from the risk from Iranian retaliation. And that is the reason why we've enhanced the force protection measures in our bases in Cyprus, why the Prime Minister has ordered the further deployment of Typhoons that are at our base at RAF Akrotiri, and why we are investing in ground-based air defence. There's further measures that we will be looking at in the coming months ahead as we seek to implement the Strategic Defence Review, but I can give them the reassurance that the work to look at security will affect not just UK bases, but those for our overseas personnel as well.
Last but by no means least, the ever-patient Jim Shannon.
Mr Deputy Speaker, can I thank the Minister very much for his statement today and for his commitment, which we can all see very clearly. Just to describe what Armed Forces Day in Newton Ards in my constituency of Strangford on Saturday, 60,000 people came to mark and respect those who serve in uniform, whether it be in the Army, the Air Force or the Royal Navy. They are part of our community, and they showed that in solidarity and solidarity with them when it came to their courage, their bravery and their dedication. So very clearly, and the Honourable Lady, by the way, I was right to say, I met the lady who will take over at Thiepval Barracks in Lisburn at the end of this year. Again, an indication of the commitment of those women and ladies who can do the job equally as well as anybody else. I make that comment, but I ask this question. The actions of those criminals at Brize Norton may cost up to perhaps maybe £30 million in damage and also security measures that will have to take place. However, the true cost of this is not just measured in money, but it is the anger that right-thinking people have towards those pro-Palestine activists who would attack our military to make their political point. They are a threat to those of us who live in this United Kingdom of Great Britain and Northern Ireland, and this terrorism cannot be accepted. It reminds so many of us, especially from Northern Ireland, of the dark days gone by. So how will the Minister acknowledge the righteous anger of the good people of the United Kingdom of Great Britain and Northern Ireland, and what steps will the Minister take to ensure there's not a repeat in Aldergrove or indeed any other military base with British personnel here and abroad, some of whom are my Stratford constituents, and some of them who are stationed in military bases, not just in the United Kingdom, but indeed across the whole world. Sorry, Mr Deputy Speaker.
Well, can I thank the honourable gentleman for giving an update on Armed Forces Day in his constituency. Across the entirety of the United Kingdom, there is real pride in the men and women who serve in our armed forces. And although this may be a difficult week for international affairs, though we may be looking at more debates about force protection than perhaps we might ordinarily do, let us all take a moment out to make sure that we are thanking those people who serve, thanking their families for the support that they offer, thanking those people who work in the defence industries that equip our people with the cutting-edge gear that they need, and thanking the society that stands behind them, because our armed forces are only as strong as the industry that stands behind them, as the nation that stands behind them. And I hope everyone watching this debate will have been able to see the strong cross-party support for our armed forces and the strong sense of support as we seek to improve the security measures to make sure that we are protecting our people, whether at home or abroad.
Thank you, and I'm sure that the whole House on both sides will concur with the final remarks from the Minister of State. I thank the Minister of State and the opposition front bench for their attendance. That concludes the statement.